Have you ever felt that the world is still holding back some of its greatest stories? As if entire landscapes were written in a secret language only a few ever learned to hear. In China, there are mountains so unreal that even the most patient traveler questions whether they are standing on Earth or wandering through a dream. They rise not as ordinary peaks, but as living sculptures of stone, mist, and silence, each one carved by forces older than history. These places are not marked by flashing signs or crowded paths. They remain, for the most part, hidden in plain sight, as though nature itself decided to keep a few wonders close to its chest. And if you are willing to look beyond postcards and guidebooks and simply listen, you'll discover that the stones themselves begin to whisper. Tonight, we walk together into these mountains, into landscapes so strange, so magnificent, they seem almost unwilling to be believed. The first time I came across Zhangjiajie, I wasn't sure if I had stumbled into another world. Thousands of stone pillars rise straight out of the earth, thin and towering like petrified trees reaching into the clouds. Some stand over 600 feet high, balancing forests at their crowns, their bases shrouded in mist. The wind slips between them, carrying echoes that feel almost human. And the deeper you wander, the more you sense you are in a place that is half natural wonder, half ancient myth, formed by sandstone and quartz, weathered over millions of years by water and frost. These pillars became so unique that they inspired the floating mountains in the film Avatar. But even that cinematic vision cannot capture the quiet gravity of standing beneath them. The paths wind along wooden walkways, and when the mist thickens, the stone giants appear to float, suspended in the sky, as if the ground itself has disappeared. Locals tell stories of spirits that guard these mountains, that the pillars are not mere stone, but frozen guardians watching over the valley. Walking here is like drifting between science and legend, where both explanations seem equally true. When the sun begins to lower, light spills across Zhangjiajie in a way that feels staged, golden beams filtering through gaps between the stone towers, painting their faces in soft fire. Small birds swoop between the cliffs, their wings flashing silver against the dusk. Some of the pillars are so narrow, they appear as if they should fall, but they have stood this way for millions of years, held in balance by forces invisible to us. Geologists explain it as erosion, wind and water carving away everything but the hardest rock. Yet when you stand in their shadow, science only tells half the story. You start to believe, if only for a moment, that these mountains are alive, that they are breathing slowly, and that their patience stretches far beyond our fleeting lives. In the quiet, your own breath slows to match the rhythm of the land, and you feel that peculiar closeness, as if you are not observing the mountains, but the mountains are observing you. Not far from here, another mountain range bends reality in its own way. Huangshan, the Yellow Mountain, has been celebrated in Chinese art and poetry for centuries, and when you see it, you understand why. The peaks are granite, shaped into rounded forms that seem to melt and rise all at once. What makes them unforgettable, however, is not just the stone, but the sea of clouds that gathers around them. On the right day, when you climb high enough, the world below vanishes into a rolling ocean of white, and only the tallest peaks pierce the surface like islands adrift. Artists have painted this scene for over 1,000 years, yet no canvas truly captures the sensation of being inside it. Pines cling to impossible ledges, their roots gripping stone as if they were born from the rock itself. They twist and lean in shapes sculpted by centuries of wind, each tree a living brushstroke across the landscape. Travelers sometimes spend days waiting for the right balance of mist and light, chasing the moment when the mountains reveal their full grace. Huangshan is not only beautiful, it is deeply storied. Ancient poets believed these peaks were the stairway to immortality, a place where the human spirit could slip closer to heaven. The mountains carry legends of elixirs, brewed in hidden caves, of sages meditating in silence among the cliffs. Even today, when the mist thickens and silence falls, it is easy to imagine an old hermit seated cross-legged in the fog, watching the centuries roll by. From a scientific view, Huangshan formed more than 100 million years ago, lifted by tectonic forces and sculpted by glaciers and erosion. Its granite cliffs have cracked into bold shapes, and thermal springs flow at its base, warming the valleys below. Yet these details feel like footnotes compared to the overwhelming experience of standing on a narrow ledge, looking out across a cloud sea so vast, it seems to erase time. You begin to understand why Chinese ink paintings are filled with mountains rising from mists. They were not exaggerations but faithful reflections of what truly exists here. And when night falls over Huangshan, the transformation is almost surreal. The clouds become silver under the moon. The pines stand silhouetted against starlight, and the peaks glow faintly as if lit from within. Silence presses in, broken only by the sound of wind brushing through needles and the distant call of a nightbird. Standing there, you realize how small we are, and yet how profoundly connected. A single traveler in the vast dialogue between stone, sky, and time. It is this feeling, more than any fact or photo, that binds you to these places. The mountains do not need us, but somehow in their presence we remember parts of ourselves we had forgotten. This is where our journey begins, among stone pillars and seas of clouds, in landscapes that exist not just as scenery, but as living secrets of the earth, patiently waiting for those who come quietly enough to hear them. Leaving behind the towering stone pillars of Zhangjiajie and the mist-wrapped peaks of Huangshan, we drift southward, where the land transforms yet again. Here, the earth no longer rises in broad granite forms or jagged sandstone towers. Instead, the land seems to ripple like the surface of a great green ocean, its waves frozen into mountains that stretch to the horizon. This is Guilin, a landscape so distinct that for centuries it has been described as the most beautiful scenery under heaven. The peaks here are karst formations, limestone shaped over 200 million years by water slowly dissolving the stone. What remains are sharp cones, towers, and ridges rising straight from the earth, their slopes covered in bamboo, their valleys cradling rivers that curve like silk ribbons through the plain. On misty mornings, the mountains appear to float, their silhouettes fading in and out like brushstrokes on an endless scroll. It feels less like standing in nature and more like stepping directly into an ancient painting, as if the art itself became real and wrapped around you. The Li River winds its way between these peaks, carrying with it stories of emperors, poets, and fishermen who have long found inspiration here. Drifting on the river, the water reflects the emerald slope so perfectly that at times it is difficult to tell where land ends and reflection begins. Small wooden boats with cormorant birds balance gently on the current, echoing traditions that have endured for centuries. The birds are trained to dive and return with fish, their graceful movements part of a rhythm that feels timeless. Above, the limestone cliffs are pitted with caves and hidden grottos, carved by underground rivers that still flow silently beneath the surface. Many of these caves hold their own mysteries, with chambers filled with stalactites and stalagmites shaped like dragons, temples, or mythical creatures. Locals give them names that blend fact and imagination, because here in Guilin, reality and legend are woven so tightly together that separating them seems unnecessary. Every bend of the river feels like the turning of a page, and every peak stands like a character in a poem written not with words but with stone. At dusk, the air thickens with the sound of insects and the soft glow of lanterns from villages tucked into the valleys. Farmers return from rice terraces that spread like patchwork along the riverbanks, their fields reflecting the fading light in shimmering layers. From higher ridges, the terraces appear like vast stairways of silver and green, climbing toward the peaks as though humanity itself is reaching for the mountains. This harmony between people and land is what has given Gillen its lasting identity. A landscape not only formed by natural forces but also shaped gently by human hands. And though Gillen is visited by many, there are corners here where silence holds, where the mountains fold in such a way that you can still find yourself entirely alone with the sound of river water and the feeling of being somewhere that belongs to both earth and dream. It is easy to see why artists, poets, and wanderers alike have carried Gillen in their hearts for generations. The mountains here are not just scenery, they are symbols of beauty itself. Far to the northwest, the earth reveals another secret, one entirely unlike the green peaks of Gillen. In the remote province of Gansu lies the Zhangye Dansha landform, a mountain range so vividly colored it appears painted by hand. Rolling hills and sharp ridges stretch across the desert, striped with layers of red, orange, yellow, green, and even blue, each band a record of millions of years of geological history. These colors come from mineral deposits laid down by ancient rivers, compressed into sandstone, and slowly thrust upward by tectonic movement. Wind and rain carve the shapes we see today, leaving cliffs and valleys where the layers are exposed like pages of Earth's diary. The result is a natural rainbow mountain range that seems almost impossible to believe until you are standing among it. Photographs capture the colors, but not the silence, not the dry wind that brushes against your face, or the way the sun shifts the hues from soft pastels at dawn to deep crimson and gold at sunset. It is a place that overwhelms the senses, where nature shows its hand openly, unapologetically, in full display. Walking among the ridges, you notice how the colors shift with perspective. From one angle, a slope glows with the deep rust of iron oxide. From another, it brightens into pale yellow, streaked with minerals that tell of ancient seas long vanished. Some call Zhangye Dansha a miracle of the earth. Others describe it as a painter's palette left behind by the gods. Yet what makes it extraordinary is not just the spectacle of color, but the reminder of time itself. Each band of rock is a layer of history, deserts, lakes, rivers, all recorded in silent stone, stacked one upon another for millions of years until they became mountains. Standing there, the human sense of time collapses. Our generations, our centuries, seem like the blink of an eye. The Dansha Mountains teach us, wordlessly, that the earth is patient beyond comprehension. The beauty is real, yes, but it is also the product of deep, relentless change, of processes too vast for us to fully see. And somehow, in that knowledge, the colors become even more precious because they are both eternal and fleeting, both solid and fragile all at once. When night falls over Zhangye Dansha, the colors fade into shadow, but the sky comes alive with stars. This desert region is far from the noise and lights of cities, and the Milky Way stretches unbroken across the horizon. It is here that you understand why ancient people believed the heavens and the mountains were in dialogue. The rainbow hills below and the starlit sky above feel like two reflections of the same mystery. You can imagine caravans of travelers along the Silk Road stopping to marvel at the same sight, their fires flickering in the desert wind, their voices carried into the silence. The mountains have not changed, though the world around them has transformed countless times. To walk among them is to join an unbroken line of witnesses, stretching across history, each one touched by the same sense of wonder. And perhaps that is the true power of these hidden places. They remind us that while our lives are brief, the earth holds stories that endure, waiting for those who come quietly enough to listen. From the painted deserts of Zhangye Dansha, our journey drifts south again, toward the province of Yunnan, where the air grows thinner and the horizon sharpens into white peaks that seem to pierce the sky. Here the mountains are no longer painted in soft mists or rainbow sandstone, but crowned with glaciers, their ridges jagged, their slopes shimmering beneath the sun. The first to rise before us is Jade Dragon Snow Mountain, a massif that dominates the skyline near Lijiang. Its name alone carries the weight of legend. Locals say the mountain is the embodiment of a slain dragon, its ridges the curve of its spine, its snowy crest the pale scales of its immortal body. When clouds gather, the peaks vanish entirely, only to reappear suddenly, like a revelation. The tallest summit, Shanzidou, reaches over 18,000 feet, yet it remains unclimbed, not because it is impossible, but because locals consider it sacred, too holy for footsteps to disturb, and so it stands untouched, its silence preserved, its summit belonging only to the wind. As you approach Jade Dragon, the air feels different. It is colder, thinner, carrying with it the scent of pine and the sharpness of ice. Glaciers descend from its heights, fractured into deep blue crevices that look as though the mountain itself has been wounded. Some of these glaciers are thousands of years old, their frozen layers storing the memory of climates long past. Scientists study them as records of the Earth's changing atmosphere. Yet even through the lens of science, it is difficult not to feel something spiritual here. Below the glaciers, alpine meadows burst into color in summer, filled with rhododendrons, primroses, and rare medicinal herbs. Yaks graze along the slopes, their dark coats stark against the pale grass, their bells clinking softly in the stillness. High above, lammergeiers, the bearded vultures of the Himalayas, circle slowly, their wings spanning wider than a man's height. Every detail adds to the sense that this is not simply a mountain, but an entire living world suspended between heaven and earth. The Naxi people, who have lived in the shadow of Jade Dragon for centuries, tell stories that bind the mountain into their lives. They believe the mountain is the protection of their ancestors, and many rituals are performed here to honor the spirits that dwell within. Their ancient script, one of the few pictographic writing systems still in use today, records prayers and myths tied directly to these peaks. For the Naxi, Jade Dragon is not only a natural feature, but a sacred guardian, a living being woven into their identity. Even music carries its echo. The traditional Naxi orchestra, playing instruments preserved for hundreds of years, is said to capture the sound of the mountains themselves. Travelers who come here often feel they are not entering a wilderness, but crossing into a place where earth, spirit, and human tradition exist without separation. It is a reminder that mountains are not just rock and ice. They are stories, living histories, and sacred presences that demand reverence. West of Jade Dragon lies another mountain range, even higher, even more mysterious. The Meili Snow Mountains stand on the border of Yunnan and Tibet, their highest peak, Kawagebo, soaring nearly 22,000 feet into the sky. Like Jade Dragon, Kawagebo has never been climbed, but here the reason is not only cultural reverence, but also tragedy. In 1991, a team of mountaineers attempted the summit, only for an avalanche to claim their lives. Since then, climbing has been forbidden, and the mountain remains untouched, a pure white pyramid against the horizon. For Tibetan Buddhists, Kawagebo is one of the most sacred mountains on earth. Pilgrims travel vast distances to walk Akora, a ritual circuit that circles the entire massif, a journey of nearly 150 miles that can take weeks to complete. They walk not for conquest, but for devotion, believing each step brings merit, each prayer closer to enlightenment. Watching them, you understand the mountain is not to be conquered, it is to be respected, its sanctity unbroken, its silence eternal. The glaciers of Meili are vast, descending like rivers of frozen light into the valleys below. At dawn, when the first rays of sun strike Kawagebo, the entire peak glows gold, a phenomenon that lasts only a few minutes but leaves an impression that lingers forever. Locals call it the Golden Mountain, and they rise before dawn to watch, hands clasped, prayer flags fluttering in the wind. Beneath the peaks, deep gorges cut into the earth where rivers thunder past, carrying the meltwater that sustains villages and fields far below. Snow leopards roam these slopes unseen, red pandas cling to the forests, and countless birds migrate across the high passes. To be here is to stand in a place where the world feels whole, where nature still holds dominion, and where human presence is small but meaningful. The Meili Range does not simply impress with its height or beauty. It humbles, reminding you that there are places where reverence is the only fitting response. At night, when the wind sweeps down from Kawagabo and the stars blaze over the white ridges, the silence is profound. Prayer flags snap in the dark, carrying mantras into the sky, their colors slowly fading with time, their threads fraying in the cold. Yet even as they fade, they remain, stitched into the story of the mountains, just as every pilgrim's step, every whispered prayer, becomes part of the land itself. Standing there, you realize that some mountains are not meant to be summited, not meant to be possessed. They are meant to remain untouchable, to remind us of humility, of our place in a world far larger than ourselves. Jade Dragon and Meili are not simply landscapes, they are guardians, teachers, reminders of the sacred balance between earth and sky. And in their presence, we remember that the greatest wonders of the world are not always the ones that invite us in, but the ones that hold us gently at a distance, asking only for respect, awe, and silence. Beyond the sacred silence of Meili, the land stretches further west, where the climate grows harsher, the air drier, and the sky turns an almost impossible shade of blue. Here, in the province of Gansu, rise the Kulian Mountains, a range less spoken of in travel books, yet one that has quietly stood as a border between deserts and grasslands for millennia. The peaks are jagged and cold, many rising above 18,000 feet, their ridges blanketed in snow even through summer. Beneath them lies a stark transition. To the north spreads the Gobi Desert, to the south, fertile valleys that have long supported caravans and villages along the ancient Silk Road. It is here, in this collision of climates and histories, that the Kulian Mountains have guarded their secrets. Glaciers sparkle in the high passes, feeding rivers that vanish into sand, and in the evenings the peaks glow pink and lavender under the setting sun, their silence interrupted only by the whisper of wind across the rocks. The Kulian Range is more than an imposing barrier. It is also a cradle of life. Despite the harshness of its climate, its slopes harbor unique ecosystems where wildflowers bloom unexpectedly in alpine meadows and herds of wild yaks graze among the ridges. Snow leopards still prowl here, elusive and unseen, their padded paws leaving faint trails across the snow. In spring, marmots whistle through the valleys, their calls echoing against the granite cliffs, while eagles wheel overhead, their shadows sweeping across ridges that have changed little since ancient times. For centuries, nomadic herders have guided their flocks across these slopes, leaving behind little more than the imprint of their seasonal camps. Archaeologists have found evidence of cultures long gone, stone carvings, burial mounds, forgotten fortresses that hint at the role these mountains played as both refuge and obstacle on the Silk Road. To stand among them is to feel history pressing close, not in monuments of stone cities, but in the quiet persistence of mountains that outlasted them all. What makes the Kulian even more remarkable is their role as water towers in an otherwise parched land. The glaciers here, though shrinking, feed the Heihei River and countless smaller streams, sustaining oases in the deserts below. Without them, entire regions would wither. Farmers depend on these waters for crops, villages for survival, and ecosystems for balance. Yet the glaciers are fragile, receding each year under the pressure of a warming climate. Scientists who study them speak of timelines measured in decades, not centuries, before many of them could vanish. Walking through these valleys, you feel the tension of beauty and fragility, the sense that you are seeing something both timeless and fleeting. The Kulian Mountains remind us that hidden wonders are not only scenic marvels, but lifelines, guardians of balance in lands where life is already stretched thin. They are places of stark beauty, yes, but also places that quietly decide the survival of everything that lives in their shadow. Further west, beyond the deserts of Xinjiang, the horizon rises again, this time into the Tian Shan Mountains, known as the Celestial Mountains. Their name is fitting, for when you first see them, they seem less like a range of earth and more like the ramparts of heaven itself. Stretching over 1,500 miles across Central Asia, the Tian Shan are vast, remote, and intimidating in their scale. Snow-covered summits tower above 23,000 feet, their ridges fractured with glaciers that glint like silver under the sun. Between these peaks lie deep valleys filled with forests of spruce and rivers that tumble in cascades of white water. Unlike the dry lands that surround them, the Tian Shan are lush and green in many places, a striking contradiction to the deserts of Taklamakan and Dungarian Basin that press against their borders. This contrast makes them feel like a mirage, an improbable world of ice and forest rising suddenly from arid plains, a celestial garden hidden among barren lands. Walking into the Tian Shan feels like entering a secret world. The valleys are steep and narrow, their walls dripping with waterfalls in summer and frozen into sheets of ice in winter. Wild animals roam here, ibex scaling impossible cliffs, wolves moving silently through the forests, and golden eagles soaring overhead, their cries echoing through the vast emptiness. Lakes formed by glacial melt lie cradled between ridges, their waters so clear they mirror the peaks perfectly. One of the most famous, Tianqi, or Heavenly Lake, sits like a jewel at the foot of Bogda Peak. Its turquoise waters shift with the light, from emerald in the morning to sapphire at dusk, always framed by snow and dark pines. Standing by its shore, you feel a sense of stillness so complete that even your own heartbeat seems intrusive. For centuries, travelers on the Silk Road paused here to rest and to pray, convinced that such a place could only exist through divine grace. Even now, it is difficult not to believe the same. Yet the Tian Shan are not only landscapes of beauty, they are also landscapes of endurance. For millennia, they have formed a natural barrier, shaping trade, migration, and culture across Central Asia. Their passes carried silk, spices, and stories between East and West, but only at great cost. Blizzards, avalanches, and steep ascents claimed countless lives, and many who attempted to cross were never seen again. The mountains, indifferent, remained as they were, eternal, unyielding. Today, as roads and modern routes cut through their lower valleys, the highest ridges remain as remote as ever, accessible only to the most determined. It is this remoteness that preserves their mystery. Standing on a high pass with nothing but snow, sky, and wind around you, the world below feels impossibly far away. The Tian Shan remind us that even in an age when satellites map the Earth and technology tracks every movement, there are still places where nature holds the upper hand, where we are reminded of our limits, and where the Earth reveals just enough to remind us how little we truly know. From the celestial mountains of Tian Shan, our path stretches further south and west, into a range that is older, vaster, and even more steeped in legend. The Kunlun Mountains rise across thousands of miles, a barrier so immense that for centuries they mark the very edge of the known world. Their ridges and peaks extend more than 1,500 miles, forming one of the longest mountain chains on Earth, and their summits climb above 23,000 feet, eternally crowned in snow. To the north lies the Taklamakan Desert, endless and inhospitable, while to the south begins the Tibetan Plateau, the roof of the world. Between them stands Kunlun, remote, wild, and deeply mysterious. In Chinese mythology, Kunlun is not just a mountain range, but the axis of heaven and earth, the dwelling place of gods and immortals, a paradise said to be unreachable to mortals. Even today, when satellites map its peaks and explorers trace its valleys, Kunlun feels like a place apart, a frontier between worlds, a threshold where myths remain alive. The silence here is overwhelming. The peaks rise like frozen fortresses, glaciers descending in long rivers of ice, into valleys that seem untouched by human presence. Winds sweep across the ridges, carrying snow that carves the rock sharper with every storm. The landscapes are so vast that scale itself begins to blur. Valleys stretch for dozens of miles, peaks tower higher than the clouds, and the horizon curves away under the weight of so much stone. Few people live here, and fewer still attempt to cross the range. Those who do speak of loneliness so deep it feels like another presence, of nights when the wind itself sounds like voices. The remoteness preserves an abundance of wildlife rarely seen elsewhere. Wild asses, Tibetan antelope, and even the elusive snow leopard, whose pale coat blends perfectly into the frozen ridges. Their tracks disappear quickly in the snow, a reminder that here survival is delicate, fleeting, and endlessly patient. The Kunlun Mountains stand not only as a geographical barrier, but as an unbroken wilderness, a reminder of what Earth was like before we began to shape it. The myths surrounding Kunlun are as enduring as the mountains themselves. Ancient texts describe Kunlun as the home of the Queen Mother of the West, a goddess who guarded the peaches of immortality. Her palace was said to be built of jade, surrounded by rivers of quicksilver and forests of jeweled trees. Travelers dreamed of reaching this celestial realm, though none ever succeeded. In Taoist traditions, Kunlun became the cosmic pillar, the link between heaven and earth, where sages retreated to seek enlightenment. These legends may seem distant, yet when you stand in the thin air, staring at summits that seem almost untouchable, you understand how such stories were born. The mountains feel unworldly, as if they belong more to eternity than to the present. The sacredness of Kunlun is not in temples or shrines, but in the land itself, in the way stone and snow impose silence, in the way distance dissolves all sense of human scale. Here, myth and mountain are inseparable, each giving weight to the other. As the Kunlun Mountains fade southward, they merge into the Tibetan Plateau, a land often called the roof of the world. At an average height of over 14,000 feet, the plateau is vast and endless, its horizon stretching further than the eye can follow. The air here is thin, the sky an intense brilliant blue, and the land is marked by high-altitude deserts, salt lakes that shine like mirrors, and mountains that rise even higher into the sky. This is a land of extremes, searing sunlight in the day, freezing winds at night, and an atmosphere so clear that distances appear deceptively close. Here, humanity survives only in scattered villages and nomadic camps, where yaks graze across empty plains and prayer flags ripple against the wind. The plateau is stark, but it is also alive with culture and devotion. Every pass, every lake, every peak holds meaning. The land is a mandala, a living sacred space where each element is infused with spirit. Among the most revered sites are the mountains considered holy in Tibetan Buddhism and Bon traditions. Mount Kailash, though technically part of the Trans-Himalaya within this plateau, is the most famous, but countless other peaks across the plateau hold similar sanctity. Pilgrims travel on foot for weeks or months, walking in slow circles around these mountains, spinning prayer wheels and murmuring mantras. They do not climb to conquer. To do so would be unthinkable. Instead, they walk in reverence, each step an offering, each mile a prayer. In the plateau's thin air, you begin to understand this relationship with the land. The mountains are not obstacles or even destinations. They are teachers. Their silence offers lessons in humility, their height a reminder of perspective, their endurance a reflection of patience. To see them is to realize that beauty and power do not always invite possession. Sometimes they simply invite respect. As dusk settles across the plateau, the land transforms once again. The sun, sinking behind distant ranges, ignites the sky in streaks of orange and violet. Shadows stretch across the plains, and the peaks glow faintly before fading into the night. In the distance, a line of prayer flags flutters against the wind, their colors dulled by time, their fabric worn thin, but still they stand, carrying their mantras skyward. Nomadic fires flicker in the distance, the smell of yak butter drifting faintly across the cold air. And above it all, the stars appear, sharp and countless in the thin atmosphere, stretching in a river of light across the night. Here on the roof of the world, the silence is absolute, but it is not empty. It is full of meaning, full of memory, full of the weight of a land that holds both myth and reality in perfect balance. And as you breathe the thin air, you feel not apart from it, but within it, a fleeting traveler in a place that has shaped faith, culture and wonder for countless generations before you. From the high, open silence of the Tibetan Plateau, the land fractures once more into something more complex, more restless. Here, in the southwest, the Hengduan Mountains rise in wild profusion, not as a single chain, but as a tangled maze of ridges and valleys, a great knot of stone where the earth seems to have folded and crumpled upon itself. Unlike the broad sweeps of Kunlun or the icy ramparts of Tian Shan, the Hengduan are jagged and intimate, their slopes plunging steeply into some of the deepest gorges on the planet. It is here that three of Asia's greatest rivers, the Yangtze, the Mekong, and the Salween, carve parallel paths through stone, separated by only a few dozen miles, yet each flowing thousands of miles to distant seas. Nowhere else on Earth do rivers of such scale run so close together, divided not by vast plains, but by razor ridges of rock. This place feels almost impossible, as though the Earth forgot its usual order and instead drew three lifelines side by side. The gorges here are staggering in their depth. The New River, known downstream as the Salween, cuts through canyons so narrow and sheer that sunlight only grazes the valley floor for brief moments each day. Villages perch on cliffs, their fields carved into terraces that seem to defy gravity, clinging to slopes that fall thousands of feet toward the water below. Bridges cross where the rivers roar, suspended by nothing more than wood and rope in older times, now by steel cables that still sway in the wind. Travelers who come here describe a sense of being enclosed, of walls of stone so high they blot out the sky, of rivers that seem less like water and more like moving thunder. Yet within this intensity, life flourishes. The valleys are home to rare plants and animals found nowhere else, their isolation having created pockets of biodiversity that remain little studied, little touched. The climate shifts wildly between ridges, warm and wet in one valley, cold and dry in the next. This variety has given rise to forests of extraordinary richness. Rhododendrons bloom in colors so vivid they seem painted, while ancient fir trees rise into mists that rarely lift. Higher slopes host alpine meadows bursting with flowers in summer, attracting butterflies in swarms that glitter in the sunlight. Pandas roam in parts of these forests. Red pandas slip quietly along the branches, and pheasants flash iridescent feathers as they dart between thickets. The Hengduan are recognized as one of the most biodiverse temperate regions in the world, yet their remoteness means that much of this life remains hidden, protected by sheer cliffs and the difficulty of access. To walk here is to feel as though you are stepping into a natural library, each ridge holding a story, each valley a secret chapter of evolution written slowly, patiently, without interruption. The people of the Hengduan valleys live lives as steep and winding as the land itself. Tibetan, Naxi, Yi, and countless other ethnic groups have carved homes and fields into the slopes, each culture adapted to its corner of the mountains. Prayer flags ripple across high passes, while in lower valleys, wooden houses sit among fields of barley and buckwheat. Narrow paths wind upward to monasteries perched on cliffs, where monks chant against the roar of rivers below. Stories of the land are told in local myths. Mountains are spirits, rivers are gods, valleys are sacred spaces where humans must tread carefully. This fusion of natural grandeur and spiritual meaning gives the Hengduan a presence unlike any other range. Here, the mountains are not just background, they are active companions in daily life, shaping how people see the world, guiding how they move, how they farm, how they pray. The danger of this land is as constant as its beauty. Landslides thunder down after rains, blocking paths or swallowing entire terraces. Earthquakes ripple through the ridges, reshaping cliffs in moments. Avalanches sweep across high passes in winter, and sudden floods rage through gorges after storms upstream. Yet the people endure, their lives entwined with the mountains, their resilience a reflection of the very ridges that surround them. Travelers often remark that to live here is to learn patience, to accept uncertainty, to find beauty even in fragility. It is a harshness softened by community, by tradition, by a sense of belonging to something larger, older, and stronger than any one life. To witness it is to recognize that mountains are not only wonders to visit, they are homes, and the lives shaped by them are themselves part of the wonder. At dusk, the Hengduan gorges transform. The rivers catch the last light, glowing amber as they twist between the shadows of cliffs. Smoke rises from chimneys in scattered villages, thin trails curling into the evening air. Bells ring faintly from yaks returning to pens, dogs bark along narrow paths, and the voices of families drift across the valleys. Above it all, the mountains stand, their ridges outlined in fading blue, their peaks dissolving into mist. Silence grows, broken only by the endless rush of water. And as you listen, you realize that this too is a kind of hidden wonder, not a single peak or a solitary site, but an entire landscape alive with contrasts, danger and safety, silence and thunder, solitude and community. It is a reminder that wonder does not always reveal itself in grand gestures. Sometimes it is in the slow balance of life against the immensity of stone, in the way humans and mountains learn to share their breath. From the labyrinth of the Hengduan, the mountains gather themselves into a singular figure, one that dominates the skyline of western Sichuan with an authority unlike any other. Mount Gongga, also called Minyakongka, rises to more than 24,700 feet, its summit perpetually shrouded in clouds, its glaciers spilling in every direction like rivers of frozen light. Locals call it the King of Sichuan, and when you see it, you understand why. The mountain stands not as part of a range, but as a solitary giant, towering above all its neighbors, its scale so immense that even from miles away it seems impossibly near. When the clouds part and the summit appears, there is an intake of breath, an instinctive silence, as though the mountain has revealed something not meant for every eye. Few peaks command presence like this, where simply seeing it becomes an event you remember for the rest of your life. The glaciers of Gongga are vast, extending for dozens of miles, their surfaces fractured into jagged ridges and deep crevasses that swallow sound and light alike. Some descend into valleys where forests of spruce and fir still cling, creating a collision of ecosystems, alpine ice pressing against temperate greenery, ancient forests rooted at the feet of eternal snow. The meltwaters from these glaciers feed countless rivers, sustaining communities far downstream, their flow unbroken for centuries. To walk along these valleys is to feel suspended between two worlds, the lush warmth of life below and the austere silence of ice above. The transition is abrupt and humbling. One moment the air smells of pine and earth, the next of cold stone and snow, as if you have stepped across a threshold into another realm entirely. Mount Gongga's beauty is matched by its danger. Though not the tallest mountain in the Himalaya or even in China, it is among the most lethal. Climbing attempts in the past have ended in avalanches, storms, and tragedies so frequent that mountaineers speak of Gongga with equal parts reverence and fear. The weather shifts with little warning. Clear skies can darken within minutes. Storms sweep across ridges with ferocity that defies preparation, and the mountain holds its summit as though guarding it jealously. For local Tibetan communities, this is no accident. They believe the mountain is sacred, the home of powerful deities who protect it from intrusion. To climb too high is to risk offense, to court disaster not as misfortune but as punishment. And so, while a few expeditions have succeeded in reaching the top, most who encounter Gongga do so from below, content to witness its grandeur without trespass. Around the lower slopes, monasteries stand in quiet watch. Their golden roofs glint against the backdrop of snow. Prayer flags ripple in icy winds, and monks walk the paths chanting words that rise into the thin air. Pilgrims circle the mountain in ritual journeys that take weeks, each step an act of devotion, each prostration a gesture of humility before a force greater than themselves. Along these circuits, you pass through forests, past waterfalls, and across high passes where the air burns with thinness, yet the spirit feels lifted. At dawn, the first light strikes the summit, turning it pink, then orange, then blinding white, a vision that has inspired countless stories and prayers. In such moments, you realize why the mountain is not only feared but loved. It offers not conquest, but communion, a reminder that true wonder lies not in reaching the top, but in standing beneath it and acknowledging its sovereignty. The life around Gongga adapts to its moods. Yak herders graze their animals in high valleys, their tents rising like small dots of color against the immensity of stone and ice. Alpine meadows bloom in brief summers, carpets of flowers covering slopes that will soon be buried again in snow. Birds migrate across the passes, riding winds that sweep unbroken across the plateau, while wolves and snow leopards prowl unseen in the forests and ridges. Each of these lives endures under the shadow of the mountain, shaped by its extremes, defined by its presence. Gongga is not a backdrop to their existence. It is the central force around which life bends, as steady and demanding as the cycles of the sun and the moon. And when evening falls, the king of Sichuan withdraws behind its veil once more. Clouds gather around its summit, the glaciers fade into shadow, and the valleys darken. Fires flicker in the villages below, their smoke curling upward, but the mountain remains apart, aloof, its silence unbroken. Only the sound of rivers rushing from its glaciers reaches the night, a steady reminder that even as the summit remains untouchable, its influence extends far beyond. Standing here, you understand that some mountains are not meant to be tamed or even fully known. They are meant to be honored, to be witnessed in stillness. Gongga is such a mountain, unreal in scale, rich in mystery. Its wonder hidden not in secrecy, but in the simple fact that no matter how long you stare, you can never see it all. It is always holding something back, always keeping a part of itself beyond reach. From the vastness of Sichuan, our path arcs northward, crossing deserts and open steppes, until at last we reach a different world. The Altai Mountains, where China touches the borders of Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and Russia, stand like an ancient crossroads between civilizations. Their name means golden in the languages of the steppes, and they live up to it, for when the sun strikes their ridges at dawn or dusk, the entire range glows with a deep burnished light. These are not the jagged giants of the Himalaya, but rather a gentler forested kind of mountain, cloaked in larch and birch, crowned with snow in winter, and draped in green in summer. Yet their serenity hides a depth of history and mystery that few other ranges can claim. For thousands of years, nomadic tribes have passed through these valleys, leaving behind carvings, burial mounds, and legends that echo in the silence. The Altai are mountains of memory, a living archive where culture and nature intertwine. Walking through the forests here, you feel a sense of timelessness. Rivers run cold and clear, fed by glaciers that still cling to the higher peaks. Their waters are alive with fish, their banks lined with wildflowers in summer, and their surfaces reflecting skies so wide they seem endless. In autumn, the larch forests turn golden, covering the mountainsides in a glow so rich it feels as though the land itself is aflame. Elk move silently through the trees, their antlers casting shadows against the trunks, while bears roam in search of berries and roots. Wolves howl across the valleys at night, their calls carried by winds that sweep unbroken from the steppes. The richness of life here is striking, for this is a meeting point of ecosystems. Siberian taiga pressing south, Central Asian steppes pushing north, and alpine meadows stretching down from icy peaks. Nowhere else in China does such a blending occur, and nowhere else does it feel so alive. But it is not only nature that makes the Altai extraordinary. The mountains are steeped in human history, a cradle of ancient cultures whose traces still remain. Rock carvings dating back thousands of years are etched into stone faces, depicting hunters, animals, and rituals long forgotten. Burial mounds dot the valleys, their contents speaking of lives lived in intimacy with these ridges. Some scholars suggest the Altai may be among the homelands of the early Turkic and Mongolic peoples, their languages and traditions shaped by the contours of this land. Even today, Kazakh herders ride through these valleys, guiding their flocks in patterns unchanged for centuries. Their songs echo across the grasslands, accompanied by the dombra, a simple two-stringed instrument whose notes seem to rise and fall with the mountains themselves. To sit by a fire here, listening to such music, is to feel a continuity with those who came before. To sense that these mountains are not only landscapes but living stages where countless stories have unfolded. Among the most enchanting places in the Altai is Kanas Lake, a deep turquoise body of water cradled by forested hills and snowy ridges. The lake's colors shift with the seasons, from deep sapphire in summer to pale jade in autumn, always holding a clarity that mirrors the mountains around it. Local legends speak of a giant creature that lives in its depths, a water spirit that reveals itself only in ripples that break the stillness without warning. Scientists dismiss the tales as exaggerations, pointing to large schools of fish, but the mystery persists, carried in whispers and stories told to visitors. Watching the lake in stillness, it is not hard to believe such a creature could exist. The silence is deep, the waters so opaque with mystery that anything seems possible. When fog drifts across its surface, the lake becomes almost otherworldly, a portal into the hidden heart of the Altai. The seasons here dictate life with a severity few other regions know. Winters are long, brutal, and silent, burying the valleys in snow so deep that only the strongest endure. Villages grow quiet, smoke rising steadily from chimneys as families gather close to fires. In spring, the thaw comes suddenly, rivers breaking their ice in violent torrents, carrying away branches, stones, and the memory of winter. Summer is brief but glorious, with meadows bursting into bloom, animals reappearing in the forests, and people moving with their herds into high pastures. Then autumn arrives, painting the larches gold, turning the air crisp, and filling the land with a sense of impermanence. To live in the Altai is to live by the rhythm of the seasons, to surrender to cycles older and stronger than any individual life. Travelers who come here find themselves drawn into that rhythm, their thoughts slowing, their senses heightening, their spirits adjusting to the land's ancient pulse. At night, the Altai sky is a revelation. The thin air and the distance from cities reveal stars in numbers too vast to count, a river of light pouring across the heavens. The mountains below lie dark, their forests whispering with unseen life, while above, the constellations seem close enough to touch. Nomads tell stories by firelight, linking stars to animals, heroes, and spirits, their voices carrying into the night. You realize, sitting there, that these mountains are not only hidden wonders of stone and forest, but also of connection to nature, to history, to the sky itself. The Altai remind us that wonder does not always need to be dramatic or overwhelming. Sometimes it is quiet, steady, and enduring, waiting patiently for those who make the journey. In their presence, you feel both the weight of history and the freshness of life, a balance as delicate and powerful as the mountains themselves. As the Altai fade into the horizon, and the steppes give way once more to valleys and rivers, our path bends southward, into a region of contrasts so stark, it feels like the earth has layered climates atop each other. Here, along the border of Yunnan and Myanmar, stand the Goligong Mountains, a range rarely spoken of beyond China, yet one of the most extraordinary hidden realms of all. The mountains rise sharply, forming a rugged wall between two worlds. To the east, the great valleys of the Salween and Mekong. To the west, the forests of northern Myanmar. Their slopes are drenched in mist and rain, their ridges cut by countless rivers, their peaks capped by snow, even as their valleys shimmer with tropical heat. To enter the Goligong is to step into a living paradox, a place where winter and summer coexist, where ancient ice meets evergreen rainforest, where the land seems unwilling to choose a single identity and instead becomes all of them at once. The forests here are immense, a living cathedral of biodiversity. Towering pines mix with oaks, magnolias, and rhododendrons, their branches dripping with moss, their trunks hidden beneath layers of orchids and ferns. Beneath the canopy, The air is warm and heavy, alive with the sound of insects and the calls of unseen birds. This is one of the richest temperate forest systems in the world, home to thousands of plant species, many found nowhere else. The Gaoligong is often called a gene bank by scientists, a refuge where life has survived ice ages, droughts, and shifts in climate that erased it elsewhere. Walking here, the diversity is overwhelming. A single valley might contain more species than entire countries. Trees older than dynasties stand shoulder to shoulder with delicate alpine flowers, each one adapted to its niche, each one a small miracle of endurance. The Gaoligong is not only a mountain range, it is a living museum of evolution, a place where time itself seems to have slowed, preserving what elsewhere was lost. Among the life here are creatures both familiar and rare. Red pandas climb through the branches, their rust-colored coats blending with the bark. Clouded leopards move like shadows, rarely seen, their presence known only by fleeting tracks in the mud. Elephants roam at the lower edges, slipping between bamboo groves, while golden monkeys call from the higher slopes, their voices echoing through the mist. Birds are everywhere, hornbills with wings like thunder, pheasants with tails trailing like ribbons, sunbirds flashing colors so bright they seem unreal. Each step reveals new life, a reminder that the earth still holds corners where wilderness reigns unbroken. Even at night, the forest does not sleep. Frogs call from the rivers, cicadas vibrate in choruses, and fireflies drift between the trees like wandering stars. The Gaoligong feels less like a landscape and more like an entire world, hidden away in folds of mountain and cloud. The people who live along these mountains carry traditions shaped by this abundance. The Lisu Nu and Jingpo communities weave their cultures into the forests and rivers, their songs and rituals infused with reverence for the land. Wooden houses perch on ridges, smoke rising from fires where tea leaves dry, and food simmers slowly in clay pots. Prayer flags flutter at passes, Buddhist monasteries glint golden in the sun, and shrines stand beside waterfalls, honoring spirits believed to dwell in the Cascades. The Gaoligong has long been a place of passage, part of the southern Silk Road that once carried tea and horses between China and Burma, yet its heart remains secluded, its valleys untouched by the speed of the modern world. To walk among its people is to glimpse a life paced to the rhythm of the mountains, patient, steady, and always respectful of the forces that tower above. The danger here is quiet but constant. Landslides sweep through valleys after rains, blocking paths and isolating villages. Earthquakes shake the ridges without warning, reminders of the tectonic power that built these peaks. Even the rivers, so vital to life, can turn destructive, swelling in monsoon floods that uproot trees and sweep away homes. Yet the people endure, as they always have, living with the land rather than against it, adapting to its cycles of abundance and loss. Their songs carry not sorrow, but resilience, notes that rise into the mist as naturally as the rivers flow. Travelers who pass through find themselves drawn into that rhythm, their own hurried thoughts slowing, their breath aligning with the cadence of rain and river, forest and stone. The Gaoligong teaches that to live here is not to dominate, but to belong. At dawn, the mist rolls upward from the valleys, unveiling the ridges in layers. Peaks appear one by one, first pale, then sharp, their summits glowing as the sun rises. Rivers sparkle in the distance, forests shift in shades of green and gold, and birds take flight in great flocks, their wings catching the light. Standing there, it is hard to believe such a place can exist quietly, away from the noise of fame or the press of visitors. The Gaoligong Mountains are not as celebrated as Huangshan or Zhangjiajie, yet in their hidden vastness lies a deeper wonder. They remind us that the greatest treasures are not always those most seen, but those that persist quietly, alive in their own rhythm, asking nothing but reverence. Here, the earth shows its abundance without restraint, and in its presence, you feel smaller, yes, but also profoundly fortunate, a guest in a world that is both ancient and endlessly alive. Beyond the forests of Yunnan, beyond the deserts of Xinjiang, lies a range so immense, so isolated, that it feels more like a fragment of the heavens than part of the earth. The Pamirs, straddling the corner where China meets Tajikistan, Afghanistan, and Kyrgyzstan, are among the loftiest mountains on the planet. Their name means roof of the world, and when you stand within them, there is no doubt why. Peaks here rise over 24,000 feet, their ridges serrated, their valleys barren, their glaciers vast sheets of white that swallow entire horizons. The air is thin, the silence deep, and the sense of remoteness absolute. The Pamirs are not gentle in their beauty. They are stark, raw, and overwhelming, a reminder that not all wonder reveals itself with softness. Some wonder confronts you, demands humility, and holds you in awe through its sheer scale. The valleys of the Pamirs are broad, their slopes barren except for sparse patches of grass where yaks and sheep graze. Rivers roar through them, fed by glaciers that descend in frozen torrents from ridges above. In summer, the water turns milky with silt, carrying the memory of ice down into the plains, sustaining life far away. In winter, the land hardens into silence, temperatures plummeting so low that even the rivers fall still. Life here is scarce, but not absent. Wild sheep, known as Marco Polo sheep for their vast curling horns, move in herds across the high pastures, their silhouettes sharp against the sky. Snow leopards roam unseen, their tracks a rare glimpse into a predator perfectly adapted to such extremes. Golden eagles wheel endlessly above, riding the winds that sweep across the open valleys. Each creature seems etched into the landscape, its endurance a reflection of the land itself. The people of the Pamirs, too, live in harmony with this severity. Small villages cling to the valleys, their homes built of stone, their lives tied to flocks and rivers. The Kyrgyz herders move with their animals in seasonal cycles, setting up yurts in high pastures during summer, retreating to sheltered valleys in winter. Their traditions have endured for centuries, shaped by the mountain's unyielding demands. Songs and poems echo at night by the fires, their words carrying both sorrow and pride, the story of a people who endure not in spite of the land, but through it. Traders once crossed these valleys, for the Pamirs lay on the ancient Silk Road, a passage where caravans carried jade, silk, and spices across Central Asia. Those travelers spoke of mountains so vast they seemed endless, and of people whose resilience was as extraordinary as the peaks themselves. To walk here today is to touch that same endurance, that same unbroken thread of human and mountain intertwined. Among the most breathtaking sights in the Pamirs are the glaciers. Fedchenko Glacier, though mostly in Tajikistan, flows from the heart of this range, extending for over 40 miles, the longest glacier outside the polar regions. On the Chinese side, glaciers like those of Kongur and Muttagata spread for miles, their surfaces cracked into jagged ice towers, their depths concealing centuries of snow. Standing at their edge, you feel the cold radiating outward, hear the creaks and groans of ice shifting under its own weight. It is like listening to the breathing of the earth itself, and when the sun strikes the ice, the surface glitters with shades of blue so deep they seem almost unreal, as though light itself has been trapped within. These glaciers are not static. They move, slowly but inexorably, carving valleys, feeding rivers, shaping everything in their path. They remind you that mountains are not still monuments, but living forces, always in motion, always changing. The Pamirs carry not only physical grandeur, but also spiritual weight. In Persian and Central Asian legends, these mountains were believed to touch the sky, the very point where heaven leaned down toward earth. For travelers on the Silk Road, they were both obstacle and gateway, a place of hardship, but also of transformation. Those who crossed the Pamirs often spoke of visions in the thin air, of dreams that came vividly in the silence of night. Even today, pilgrims travel to lakes and shrines within the range, offering prayers to the spirits believed to dwell in the peaks. One such lake, Karakul, lies at the foot of Muzdagata, its waters black and still, reflecting the snowy pyramid of the mountain above. To sit by its shore is to feel suspended between worlds, the depth of water beneath, the height of peaks above, the endless sky reflected on the surface. It is a place where the boundary between earth and heaven feels fragile, almost transparent. As night falls in the Pamirs, the air grows colder than you expect, biting and sharp. Villages light fires, the smell of smoke mixing with the thin wind. Above, the stars appear in overwhelming clarity, stretching across a sky so close it feels you could step into it. The mountains stand dark and silent, their glaciers faintly glowing in the starlight, their ridges etched in shadow. In that silence, you hear your own heart more clearly, feel your own breath more deeply, and realize how small you are. Yet it is not a smallness of despair, but of connection. To be here is to understand why these mountains are called the roof of the world, not only because of their height, but because they bring you closer to something vast and eternal. The Pamirs are not gentle wonders. They are fierce, demanding, and humbling, and it is precisely in their severity that their beauty lies, hidden not in softness but in strength, waiting for those willing to face their immensity. From the roof of the world, where glaciers press against the sky, the land eventually softens, folding downward into gentler shapes, into warmth, into green. Southern China holds its own mountain secrets, less famous than the high peaks of Tibet or the desert giants of Xinjiang, but no less extraordinary. The Nanling Mountains stretch across the provinces of Guangxi, Guangdong, Hunan, and Jiangxi, a long arc of ridges and forests that form a natural divide between the Yangtze Basin to the north and the subtropical lands to the south. To cross the Nanling is to pass through a threshold, from one climate, one rhythm of life, into another. For centuries, travelers spoke of these ranges as both barrier and corridor, a landscape that guarded its mysteries fiercely, yet also carried whispers of trade, culture, and migration between China's heartland and its southern frontiers. Unlike the jagged, snow-covered ranges of the west, the Nanling are cloaked in subtropical forest. Their slopes are a cascade of green upon green, layer after layer of vegetation rising into the mist. Bamboo thickets sway in the wind, their hollow stalks clattering like chimes. Ancient oaks spread their branches wide, dripping with moss and vines that hang like curtains. Beneath them grow camellias and orchids, their blossoms vivid against the deep shade. The air is warm and heavy, rich with the scent of earth and water, alive with the calls of cicadas that thrum through the valleys. In the rainy season, clouds gather and dissolve constantly, rain falling in sudden bursts that turn streams into torrents, waterfalls into roaring white curtains. In the dry months, the forest softens into stillness, the rivers shrinking, the leaves thick with dust. The Nanling breathe in cycles, their rhythm tuned not to snow and ice but to rain and sun, storm and calm. The mountains themselves are made of limestone and granite, shaped over millions of years into ridges, valleys, and caves that lie hidden beneath the forest. Water seeps through the stone, carving underground chambers where stalactites drip like frozen rain and stalagmites rise like silent guardians from the floor. Some of these caves stretch for miles, their halls vast enough to hold entire cathedrals, their walls glittering with minerals that glow in the light of a lantern. Local legends speak of dragons sleeping in these caves, of spirits dwelling in their depths, of treasures guarded by the mountains themselves. Even today, many of these caverns remain unexplored, their passages twisting into darkness, their secrets kept close. To step into one is to leave behind the world of birdsong and bamboo and enter a silence so absolute it feels otherworldly, broken only by the slow drip of water echoing through stone. Life here is as rich as the forest suggests. The Nanling Mountains are a haven for rare and endangered species. The clouded leopard moves stealthily through the undergrowth, its patterned coat blending with dappled light. Small deer dart through the thickets, while golden pheasants flash like sparks against the green. Rivers carry fish and turtles, their banks alive with frogs and dragonflies. Higher slopes host monkeys that swing from branch to branch, their calls echoing in the morning mist. This abundance has long made the Nanling a place of study for scientists, who marvel at its role as a biodiversity corridor linking China's southern and central ecosystems. Yet for those who live here, it is less a subject of study and more a way of life. The forest provides food, water, medicine, and meaning, and in return it is treated with respect, a relationship that stretches back countless generations. The people of the Nanling have adapted their traditions to the forest's moods. Villages of wooden houses line the rivers, their stilts lifting them above the floods of the rainy season. Rice paddies shimmer in terraces carved into the foothills, while tea bushes grow in the shade of taller trees, their leaves harvested in rhythms as old as the mountains themselves. Festivals mark the cycles of planting and harvest, drums and flutes echoing across the valleys, their rhythms mingling with the cicadas' endless song. Stories are told by firelight of spirits that dwell in trees, of animals that carry messages from the mountains, of caves that lead to hidden worlds. These are not just tales for children, but living parts of a culture that understands the land as animate, as conscious, as something far greater than mere scenery. To listen is to realize that for the people of the Nanling, the mountains are not background, they are kin. At sunset, the Nanling Mountains glow softly, their forests turning golden in the low light, their ridges layered in shades of blue that stretch into the distance. Mist curls upward from the valleys, catching the last rays of the sun, while the rivers reflect the sky in bands of silver and crimson. In that fading light, the forest grows louder, cicadas and frogs swelling into a chorus, night birds calling from hidden perches. Villages light their lanterns, their glow flickering between bamboo groves, while smoke from evening fires drifts lazily into the air. And above it all, the mountains stand steady, their ridges a dark silhouette against the stars now emerging one by one. Here, the Nanling reveal their wonder, not in extremes of height or danger, but in their constancy, their richness, their quiet abundance. They are hidden not because they are small, but because they are patient, offering their beauty not in a single breathtaking vision, but in the slow unfolding of life, day after day, century after century. From the subtropical forests of the Nanling, the land begins to climb again as we move northeast, the air cooling, the trees changing from bamboo and camellia to pine and birch. Here lies the Changbai Mountains, their ridges cloaked in dark forest, their peaks rising above the border of China and North Korea. This is not a vast range like the Kunlun or the Pamirs, but it holds a presence far beyond its size. Changbai means ever white, named for the snow that lingers on its summits through much of the year. Yet what makes these mountains most extraordinary is their heart, a volcanic crater lake so still, so perfectly ringed by cliffs that it has become a legend unto itself. Known as Heaven Lake, it sits at over 7,000 feet above sea level, its waters stretching for miles, reflecting sky, cloud, and the silent guardians of stone that encircle it. To see it is to feel that you have reached a place where the earth hides something sacred. Heaven Lake is born of fire. The Changbai volcano last erupted in the 10th century with a force so great that ash fell as far as Japan and northern Greenland, one of the largest eruptions in recorded history. That cataclysm carved the vast crater that now holds the lake, filling it with rain and snowmelt until it became a mirror for the heavens. Today, the lake is calm, its surface often wrapped in mist, its colors shifting with the sky above, deep sapphire at noon, pale silver under moonlight, glowing gold at dawn. Yet beneath its stillness lies power. Hot springs bubble at its edges, fumaroles release sulfurous steam, and scientists warn that though the volcano slumbers, it is not dead. To stand on the rim of Heaven Lake is to balance between tranquility and danger, to feel the beauty of still water and the memory of fire held in one breath. The forests that cloak the slopes of Changbai are no less enchanting. Vast tracts of Korean pine, spruce, and birch stretch across the mountainsides, their trunks tall and straight, their needles whispering in the wind. In summer, the forest floor bursts with ferns and wildflowers, while in autumn, the leaves blaze red and gold, painting the ridges in fire before winter buries them in snow. This wilderness shelters animals found nowhere else in China. The Siberian tiger once prowled here, and though rare now, signs of its survival remain. Amur leopards move silently in the shadows, their coats blending with the undergrowth. Black bears roam the valleys, while sables, deer, and wild boar thrive in the forests. Birds call from every level, eagles soaring overhead, owls hunting at night, woodpeckers drumming against ancient trunks. The Changbai Mountains are a sanctuary, a reminder of what the earth looked like before human expansion pressed so heavily upon it. Legends cling tightly to these mountains. Heaven Lake is said to be the home of mysterious creatures, serpentine shapes glimpsed by fishermen and travelers, their presence whispered from generation to generation. For the Manchu people, who trace their origins to this region, the lake is sacred. Their creation myths tell of an ancestor born from a heavenly maiden who bathed in its waters, making Changbai not only a place of natural beauty, but also a cradle of identity. To this day, ceremonies are held at the lake, offerings made to the spirits of water and mountain, prayers whispered into the wind. The spiritual weight of the Changbai is palpable. Standing at the rim of Heaven Lake, surrounded by cliffs and clouds, you feel the pull of something ancient, something that ties nature and humanity together in a bond that defies explanation. The mountain is not just landscape here, it is origin, memory, and guardian. In winter, the Changbai transforms into a world of ice and silence. Snow buries the forests, rivers freeze into stillness, and the lake becomes a vast sheet of white, its surface locked in silence beneath the cliffs. The air is sharp, each breath cutting into your lungs, each step sinking into drifts that swallow sound. Yet even here, life persists. Tracks of foxes wind across the snow, owls glide silently over frozen valleys, and wolves move in packs across the plains below. For those who endure the cold, the reward is a beauty few others witness. The rising sun turning snowfields pink, the forests glowing with frost, the lake glimmering like crystal beneath the pale winter sky. The Changbai in winter is not inviting, but it is unforgettable. A vision of resilience and purity that speaks of the land's unyielding spirit. When the seasons shift and spring returns, the mountains awaken with sudden force. Snow melts into torrents that crash down cliffs, feeding rivers that roar with new life. Flowers push through thawing soil, birds return in flocks, and the forest fills with sound once again. Heaven Lake sheds its ice, its waters once more reflecting clouds drifting lazily overhead. The mountains remind you that time here is circular, that endings are always beginnings, that fire can give birth to water, and that silence always gives way to song. The Changbai are not the tallest mountains, nor the most visited, but in their crater lake and ancient forests, they hold a mystery few places can match. They are a wonder not for their scale, but for their presence. A reminder that hidden beauty lies not only in what is vast, but in what is sacred, patient, and alive with memory. From the rim of Heaven Lake, where volcanic cliffs cradle waters that reflect the sky, we turn our path back toward the center of China, where another chain of mountains stretches like a great wall across the land. The Qinling Mountains run east to west, forming a spine that divides the country in more ways than one. To their north lie the Loess Plateaus, dusty and dry, the cradle of ancient dynasties. To their south stretch the humid valleys of the Yangtze Basin, green and fertile. The Qinling are more than just a geographical barrier. They are the meeting line of climates, cultures, and histories. For thousands of years they have stood as a boundary, shaping the identity of the land. In their forests and ridges, countless legends were born, and within their valleys, emperors built palaces, poets found inspiration, and hermits sought silence. The slopes of the Qinling are a tapestry of forests, their lower reaches covered in broadleaf trees, oaks, maples, and chestnuts, while higher ridges are cloaked in pines and firs. In spring, the valleys erupt with blossoms, peonies and magnolias painting the land in pink and white, while in autumn the leaves blaze crimson and gold, setting the mountains aflame with color. Streams tumble from the ridges, feeding rivers that sustain entire provinces. Mist often settles among the peaks, softening the edges of stone and forest, giving the range a dreamlike presence. Walking these trails, you feel a sense of stepping into history, for the Qinling were once paths of emperors and armies, scholars and monks. Their passes linked east to west, their ridges hid temples where silence endured, their valleys nurtured fields that fed civilizations. Hidden among these forests is one of the rarest creatures on Earth, the giant panda. The Qinling population is distinct from those in Sichuan, slightly smaller, with different facial markings, but no less captivating. Here, in bamboo thickets that whisper in the wind, pandas live their slow, deliberate lives, feeding and wandering in rhythms unchanged for millennia. They are not alone. Golden snub-nosed monkeys leap through the trees, their blue faces and flowing fur catching the light. Taken, shaggy and strong, move in herds across alpine meadows. Birds of every color and call flit through the branches. Owls, woodpeckers, eagles, and pheasants. The Qinling are a living ark, a refuge where life that has vanished elsewhere still survives. For scientists, they are a treasure of biodiversity. For travelers, they are proof that even in a country as vast and developed as China, wilderness still breathes quietly, waiting to be noticed. But the Qinling are not only natural, they are cultural, historical, and deeply spiritual. In ancient times, Taoist hermits retreated to these mountains, believing them to be places where earth and heaven touched. Temples still stand on remote ridges, their roofs tiled in gold or green, their halls filled with incense smoke and quiet chanting. Legends speak of immortals who dwelled here, sages who transcended mortality by aligning their spirits with the rhythms of stone and sky. The mountains themselves were seen as cosmic symbols, their ridges marking the balance between yin and yang, north and south, dry and wet, past and future. Even today, the presence of the Qinling carries a weight beyond their physical form. They are more than mountains. They are symbols of balance, of the unity of opposites, of the deep harmony that defines the Chinese landscape. Life in the foothills reflects this harmony. Villages nestle into valleys, their fields of wheat and rice spreading in orderly rows. Farmers tend their crops in the shadow of peaks, their work tied to the same cycles that shape dynasties. Markets bustle with the trade of herbs gathered from the slopes, teas dried from leaves shaded beneath forests, mushrooms harvested after rains. Local songs celebrate the mountains, their verses carrying both pride and reverence. For the people here, the Qinling are not distant wonders but daily companions, their guardians, their teachers, their measure of time. Travelers passing through often remark that the mountains feel inhabited not just by animals and people, but by memory itself. Every ridge seems to carry a story, every valley an echo, every path the footprint of those who came before. At dusk, the Qinling glow in layers of shadow and light. The last rays of sun strike the higher ridges, setting them aflame while the valleys grow cool and dark. Smoke drifts from village chimneys, the sound of bells clinks faintly from herds returning home, and the forest comes alive with night calls. Owls hooting from branches, crickets singing in the grass. Above, stars emerge slowly, their light sharp against the thin mountain air. The mountains grow silent, but it is not an empty silence. It is full, rich, like the pause between verses in a song. And standing there, you realize that the Qinling are not merely hidden wonders of geography. They are hidden wonders of continuity, where nature, history, and myth have lived side by side for thousands of years, woven together into a fabric so seamless that to touch one thread is to feel the weight of all the rest. East of the Qinling, the land rises once more into bold vertical drama. The Taihang Mountains stretch along the provinces of Shanxi, Henan, and Hebei, forming a chain of sandstone and granite that towers above the plains. Where the Qinling are cloaked in forest and mist, the Taihang are carved with sheer cliffs, their faces rising like walls of crimson stone, their ridges cutting sharp against the sky, For centuries, they served as a natural barrier, shielding ancient kingdoms from one another, their gorges and passes becoming both obstacles and refuges. Today, they remain hidden wonders, their canyons among the deepest in China, their villages perched precariously on cliffsides where roads seem impossible. To see them for the first time is to feel that you have stumbled into a fortress of nature, where stone itself has chosen to rise in defiance. The gorges of the Tai Hang are unlike any others in the country. Some plunge more than 1,600 feet, their walls so close that the sky narrows into a thin strip of light. Rivers run through their depths, their waters reflecting the cliffs in shimmering fragments. Waterfalls crash from above, throwing spray that catches the sun in rainbows, their sound reverberating against stone until it feels as though the entire canyon is alive with thunder. Trails carved into cliff walls lead upward in dizzying spirals, some no wider than a cart, their edges dropping away into emptiness. Bridges made of planks and chains still stretch across certain chasms, reminders of older times when the only way forward was to trust in wood, rope, and courage. Even with modern paths carved into the stone, walking here carries a sense of danger and awe, the feeling that the mountain allows passage only at its own discretion. One of the most breathtaking places in the Tai Hang is the Red Flag Canal. Not natural, but carved by human endurance into the very cliffs. In the 1960s, villagers of Lingshan spent years chiseling a channel by hand, clinging to the sides of vertical rock faces to guide water from distant rivers into their parched valleys. The result was a 44-mile canal cut directly into the mountain, winding along cliff walls, carrying life where once there was drought. Walking along it today, you see more than an engineering feat. You see human determination embedded into the stone, a wonder born of necessity, a reminder that people too can shape mountains when survival demands it. This fusion of natural grandeur and human resilience is part of what makes the Tai Hang unique. They are not untouched wilderness, but landscapes of interaction where human struggle and natural might coexist in uneasy harmony. Yet the wildness of the Tai Hang is never far. Villages cling to ledges so narrow that their houses seem to grow out of the rock itself. Fields of millet and corn spread in terraces carved painstakingly into slopes, their golden hues bright against the red stone. Goats wander along impossible paths, their bells tinkling faintly, while farmers guide donkeys loaded with baskets along trails that vanish into shadow. Life here is not easy, but it is enduring, shaped by the stubborn strength of both land and people. Local legends tell of gods who struck the mountains to open paths for rivers, of heroes who fought battles in the gorges, of spirits that still linger in caves and ridges. At night, when the cliffs loom dark against the stars and the rivers echo faintly from below, you understand why such stories persist. The mountains are not just stone, they are presences, vast and unyielding. The seasons bring even more transformation. In spring, wildflowers bloom across the meadows at higher elevations, their colors vivid against the stark cliffs. Summer rains swell the rivers, turning waterfalls into roaring torrents and cloaking valleys in mist. Autumn brings brilliance, the forests that cling to slopes exploding into reds and golds, the cliffs glowing even brighter in contrast. Winter strips the land bare, snow settling into cracks and ridges, the rivers freezing into silence. Each season reshapes the Tai Hang, but the cliffs remain, eternal guardians watching over valleys that seem small in their shadow. Travelers who visit often describe a feeling of being dwarfed, of realizing how fragile their steps are along the ledges. And yet that fragility is not frightening, but grounding, a reminder of the scale of the world and our place within it. As dusk descends, the cliffs turn the color of embers, glowing deep red as the sun slips behind them. Shadows fill the canyons, rivers darken into glass, and the wind sweeps across ridges with a low hum. Villages light their lanterns, the warm glow flickering against stone walls, while smoke rises into the twilight air. From high on a ledge, you can look out across ridge after ridge, their silhouettes stretching into the distance, fading into layers of blue and gray. The silence deepens, broken only by the occasional call of a nightbird or the faint rush of water far below. It is in this moment that the Tai Hang reveal their true wonder, not in a single view or spectacle, but in the sheer scale of their presence. They stand not just as mountains, but as fortresses of memory, guardians of history, and hidden marvels of stone, waiting patiently for those who come quietly enough to stand in their shadow. From the red stone cliffs of the Tai Hang, the road winds east, through plains and valleys, until it reaches Fujian, where the air grows soft and humid, the mountains lower, but no less full of mystery. The Wuyi Mountains do not tower like the Pamirs, or blaze with autumn fire like the Qinling, but they hold their own quiet majesty, one born of mist, water, and time. Their slopes are covered in thick subtropical forests, their ridges worn into gentle curves, and their cliffs rising suddenly in sheer red walls above winding rivers. This is a landscape where stone, forest, and water exist in perfect balance, where nothing is overwhelming, but everything is complete. To walk here is not to be dwarfed, but to be embraced, folded into a harmony that feels as old as the earth itself. The heart of the Wuyi lies in its river valleys. The Nine Bend River snakes through the range, curving gently between cliffs and forests. Its waters clear, its surface reflecting the green of bamboo and the red of stone. Boats glide slowly downstream, flat-bottomed rafts steered by poles, their movement unhurried, their rhythm echoing the flow of the water itself. Around each bend, new cliffs rise, their faces carved with caves, shrines, and inscriptions left by poets and monks over centuries. Some cliffs stand like walls, smooth and unbroken, others fractured into pillars that seem to lean toward the river. Mist drifts between them in the mornings, softening their outlines until they appear to float, suspended between earth and sky. Travelers often speak of the river journey as less a passage through space than a passage through time, where every bend carries you deeper into a world untouched by haste. The mountains here are not only landscapes, but sanctuaries. For over 1,000 years, Taoist and Buddhist hermits sought refuge in the Wuyi's caves and forests, building temples on ridges and shrines beside streams. Their presence lingers still in carved stone steps that climb steep slopes, in statues worn smooth by centuries of touch, in the faint echo of bells carried on the wind. One of the most sacred peaks, Tianyu, meaning heavenly tour, rises above the river, its summit offering a view across the entire valley. From here, the river curves below like a painted scroll, the cliffs stand like watchful guardians, and the forests spread in unbroken waves of green. Standing at the summit, you understand why poets once called the Wuyi a realm beyond the dust of the world, a place where the ordinary dissolves, and only silence, mist, and meaning remain. The Wuyi Mountains are also a cradle of culture. It was here that Da Hong Pao, the most famous of China's oolong teas, first grew in the crevices of the cliffs, nourished by mineral-rich soil and shaded by mist. The bushes that gave birth to this tea are still revered, their leaves worth more than gold, their legacy carried in the countless tea gardens that now spread across the valleys. To drink Wuyi tea is not merely to taste a beverage, but to taste the land itself, its stone, its rain, its sun, its silence. Tea houses line the riverbanks, their windows opening to views of cliffs and forests, their tables set with small clay pots where tea is brewed in careful rituals. The act of drinking here is slow, deliberate, an invitation to linger, to let time itself steep like the leaves in the water. It is in this rhythm that the mountains reveal another side of their wonder, not only what you see, but what you taste, what you carry within. Legends entwine with every ridge. Stories tell of immortals who descended to the Wuyi to play chess on stone tables still visible today. Their game never finished. Caves are said to hold dragons, their breath emerging as the mists that coil around the peaks. The river itself is called a path of spirits, its 9 bends reflecting the stages of life and afterlife. Villagers tell these stories not with doubt but with quiet assurance, as though the land itself confirms them. And when you walk through the forests, When you sit by the river and watch the mist rise, you find it difficult to disbelieve. The Weyi are not a place of spectacle, but of intimacy, where wonder is woven not into towering grandeur, but into the fabric of daily life, into every cup of tea, every prayer whispered into the mist. As the day ends, the cliffs glow faintly red in the fading light, the river darkens into stillness, and the villages along its banks light their lanterns. The smell of tea drifts through the air, mingling with wood smoke, while the sound of insects swells in the forest. Above, the ridges fade into shadow, their outlines softened by the night, their presence quiet but steady. Sitting by the water, you feel no rush to move, no urge to reach a summit or chase a view. The Weyi Mountains are not about arrival. They are about presence, about slowing to the pace of the river, about hearing the language of cliffs and forests when you are finally still enough to listen. Their wonder lies in patience, in depth, in the way they teach you not to seek, but simply to be. Beyond the tea valleys of Fujian, the land folds and fractures once again, this time into shapes so strange, they seem to have been drawn from dreams rather than stone. In Guizhou and Guangxi, the earth rises not in sweeping ridges or solitary giants, but in forests of limestone, karst towers that stand like endless sentinels across the horizon. Their forms are sharp, vertical, and improbable, rising hundreds of feet straight from the valleys, their cliffs scarred by rain and time, their crowns often cloaked in greenery. In mist, they appear as floating islands, suspended in the air, their bases lost in clouds. In sunlight, they glow pale silver, their shadows stretching across rice paddies and rivers below. This is the land of hidden karst, where the mountains themselves seem to defy logic, and where every valley holds a new secret waiting quietly in silence. The stone forests of Shilin in Yunnan, at the edge of this karst region, offer a glimpse of what erosion can shape over millions of years. Here limestone has been carved into towers so thin and jagged they resemble frozen blades of stone, an entire labyrinth where paths twist between walls, where arches rise overhead, and where caves open unexpectedly into darkness. Walking through Shilin feels less like entering a mountain range and more like wandering through a petrified city, every spire a tower, every canyon a street. Local Yi legends say that the stone forest was once a great sea turned to stone by the gods, its waves and currents still visible in the frozen formations, and when the wind whistles through the narrow corridors, it carries a sound that does indeed resemble the rush of water, as though the sea has never fully left. To lose yourself here is easy, for the landscape is both maze and mystery, guiding you deeper with each step. Further south, in Guangxi, the karst towers rise in even greater profusion, their silhouettes forming the backdrop of one of China's most iconic landscapes, the Li River near Guilin. Yet beyond the famous views are valleys less traveled, where the towers stand even more densely, their bases hidden by jungle, their slopes riddled with caves. Rivers vanish into the ground here, flowing silently for miles before emerging again in sudden springs. Caves stretch for endless passages, their halls glittering with stalactites and stalagmites shaped into columns, curtains, and spires. Some chambers are vast enough to hold entire villages, their ceilings lost in darkness, their silence so profound that the drip of water feels like thunder. For centuries, these caves have been places of shelter, of ritual, of story, sanctuaries where humans sought both protection and meaning in the depths of stone. Even today, many remain unexplored, their passages twisting far into the earth, their secrets untouched. The richness of these karst lands is not only geological, but also cultural. Villages cling to the valleys between the towers, their rice terraces shimmering in layers of green and gold, their houses built of wood and stone, their lives attuned to the rhythms of the rivers and the seasons. The Dong and Miao peoples, among others, have lived here for generations, their traditions entwined with the land. Their songs rise across the fields at dusk, polyphonic harmonies that echo between the cliffs, their notes carrying both joy and sorrow, history and hope. Wooden drum towers stand at the heart of villages, symbols of unity and community, their designs as intricate as the stone spires that surround them. Festivals celebrate the planting and harvest, dancers swirling in bright costumes, firecrackers echoing against the cliffs. To witness it is to see how deeply human life can adapt to even the strangest landscapes, shaping and being shaped by stone. And then there are the rivers. The karst lands are defined by water, by the way it dissolves limestone into towers, caves, and gorges. The underground rivers are as extraordinary as the mountains above, winding unseen for miles, their paths known only by the roar that emerges from cave mouths after rains. Some caverns hold subterranean lakes, their waters still and black, reflecting the stalactites above in perfect silence. Others carry rapids that echo endlessly, their foam glowing faintly in the dim light. Travelers who have ventured into these caves describe the sensation of being deep inside the earth's pulse, hearing the slow carving of stone, feeling the cool breath of hidden worlds. On the surface, the rivers are gentler, winding between the towers, reflecting their shapes in ripples of silver. To drift along them is to feel as though you are floating through a living painting, where every bend reveals a new vision, each one stranger, more unreal than the last. At twilight, the karst towers turn dark, their silhouettes rising like shadows against the fading sky. Villages light their lanterns, their glow flickering among the fields, while the rivers catch the last light in streaks of gold. The cliffs, so sharp by day, soften into mystery, their outlines blurring into mist. Above them, the stars emerge slowly, scattered across the sky, while the sound of frogs and crickets fills the valleys. It is in this moment, when stone, water, and life fall into rhythm, that the true wonder of these mountains reveals itself. The karst lands are not just about spectacle, though their beauty is overwhelming. They are about hiddenness, about landscapes shaped by forces we rarely see, about rivers that vanish underground, about caves that conceal entire worlds. Their magic lies in what they reveal only partially, leaving you always with the sense that beneath what you see, there is still more waiting, still more hidden, still more to wonder at. Beyond the limestone forests and underground rivers of the south, the land stretches westward once more, climbing steadily until it touches the edge of the Himalayas. Here the air thins, the horizon sharpens, and the scale of the world shifts again. Among these peaks stands Namcha Barwa, a mountain so immense and so mysterious that even in a land of giants it feels like another realm entirely. Rising over 25,000 feet, its summit pierces the clouds, often hidden for days or weeks at a time, revealed only in fleeting moments when the wind tears away the veil. Locals call it the throne of the gods, and when its snowy pyramid appears above the mists, you understand why. Few mountains carry such presence, at once distant and overwhelming, silent and commanding, a vision that stops you in your tracks and holds you there. Namcha Barwa's setting is as dramatic as its height. It stands at the great bend of the Yarlung Po, the highest major river canyon in the world. Here the river flowing from the plateau carves a gorge deeper than the Grand Canyon, cutting through stone for thousands of feet, its roar echoing against cliffs that seem to fall forever. Forests cling to the lower slopes, filled with orchids, magnolias, and towering pines, while glaciers hang above, feeding waterfalls that plunge in white ribbons into the valley. The contrast is staggering. Tropical growth at the base, eternal ice at the crown, a vertical world compressed into a single sweep of land. To stand at a vantage point and see the river twisting below, the cliffs rising like walls, and Namcha Barwa towering above is to witness one of the Earth's most extraordinary compositions, where every element of mountain, water, and forest gathers in perfect, improbable balance. Climbing Namcha Barwa has proven nearly impossible. Storms roll across its ridges with terrifying speed, avalanches sweep its slopes without warning, and its remoteness makes access a challenge even before the ascent begins. Few expeditions have attempted it, and fewer still have reached its summit. This resistance only deepens its aura, for mountains that refuse conquest remind us that not all wonders are meant to be possessed. To the people who live in its shadow, Namcha Barwa is not a challenge but a deity. They believe spirits guard its ridges, and that to trespass too far is to invite misfortune. Pilgrims walk circuits around its base, chanting prayers, leaving offerings, their devotion as steady as the river itself. In this way, the mountain is not simply admired from afar, it is lived with, revered and feared, woven into the spiritual fabric of daily life. The gorge around Namcha Barwa holds another secret, an ecosystem as unique as its scale. Because of the extreme elevation differences, climates stack here in layers. Tropical rainforests at the base, temperate forests higher up, alpine meadows above them, and glaciers at the top. In the span of a single day's journey, you can pass from orchids and monkeys to yaks and snow leopards, from butterflies fluttering in sunlight to icy silence broken only by the groan of moving ice. This layering makes the gorge one of the most biodiverse places in the entire Himalaya, a hidden cradle of life where species found nowhere else endure quietly. Scientists study it with fascination, but even science cannot fully capture the feeling of being here. The sense that you are walking through an entire planet compressed into a single canyon, a vertical world that defies imagination. Legends abound in this land. Stories tell of hidden valleys within the gorge, Shangri-La-like sanctuaries cut off from the outside world, where fields remain fertile and time moves differently. Travelers speak of moments when the mist closes in, and silence falls so deeply that it feels as though the earth itself has withdrawn into secrecy. Others tell of visions seen in the thin air, lights drifting above the forests, voices carried on the wind, shapes glimpsed among the cliffs. Whether myth or reality, these stories echo the truth of the land, that it is not easily known, not easily explained. Namcha Barwa and its gorge hold back more than they reveal, offering only glimpses, only hints, reminding us that some wonders are not meant to be fully understood. At dusk, the gorge grows dark quickly, the cliffs swallowing the light, the river turning black and furious in the shadows. Clouds gather around the summit of Namcha Barwa, hiding it once again, as though reminding us that such visions are not ours to keep. Villages along the lower valleys light their fires, their smoke curling upward in fragile threads, while the roar of the river fills the night. Above, the stars emerge sharp and countless, stretched across the sky in arcs of silver, their reflection broken in the waters below. And in that moment, you realize that what makes Namcha Barwa so extraordinary is not just its height, not just its gorge, but its ability to remain elusive. It shows itself only briefly, only when it chooses, reminding us that the earth still holds mysteries beyond our reach. Its wonder lies in absence as much as presence, in secrecy as much as spectacle, a hidden giant that guards its silence with the patience of eternity. Beyond the roaring bend of the Yarlung Tsangpo, the land spreads once again into high, dry plateaus where the air is thin and clear, and the horizon is vast enough to swallow time itself. Here stands a mountain unlike any other, not the tallest, not the most jagged, yet one of the most powerful in its presence. Mount Kailash rises in perfect symmetry, its slopes of dark stone cut by white bands of snow, its summit standing like a pyramid etched against the sky. At just over 21,000 feet, it is dwarfed by the giants of the Himalaya, yet it is this peak that draws pilgrims from across Asia, this peak that has been called the axis of the world, the center where heaven and earth meet. To look upon it is to feel that you are in the presence of something not merely natural but transcendent, a mountain that does not ask to be admired but to be revered. Kailash has never been climbed and likely never will be. Local belief holds it to be untouchable, the home of deities who guard its summit, a place where human footsteps are forbidden. To attempt ascent would be to desecrate its sanctity, and so, while countless other mountains have been conquered, Kailash stands unbroken, inviolate, its silence undisturbed by crampons or ropes. Instead, pilgrims journey not upward but around, walking the Kora, the ritual circuit that encircles the mountain. The path stretches for 32 miles, crossing passes at over 18,000 feet, its air thin, its terrain rugged, Yet each year, thousands make the journey, prostrating themselves on the ground, step by step, their devotion written in the dust. For Buddhists, Hindus, Jains, and Bon practitioners alike, Kailash is a sacred axis, each tradition weaving its own meaning, yet all converging on the same reverence. Few places on earth hold such universal sanctity. To walk the Kora is to witness a tapestry of faith. Prayer flags ripple in the wind, their colors bright against the barren stone. Pilgrims chant mantras softly as they walk, their wheels spinning, their footsteps steady, their eyes often filled with tears. Some complete the circuit in a single day, enduring exhaustion and altitude, driven by devotion. Others take days, pausing in monasteries that cling to cliffs, their walls painted with ancient frescoes, their halls filled with the sound of horns and drums. Along the way, streams flow with glacial melt, icy and pure, and from the high passes the view of Kailash is overwhelming, its perfect symmetry seeming closer than ever, its summit glowing in the light. Each bend of the path reveals it anew, never quite the same, always elusive, as if the mountain reveals only what each pilgrim is ready to see. Legends surround Kailash, as tightly as glaciers surround its slopes. Hindus believe it to be the throne of Shiva, where the god sits in eternal meditation. Buddhists hold it as the dwelling of Demchok, a deity of bliss, his presence embodied in the mountain's form. For the Bon tradition, it is the axis mundi, the center of the universe, where heaven, earth, and the underworld converge. Even the shape of Kailash is said to mirror the cosmic mandala, its four sides aligned with the cardinal directions, its ridges radiating like the spokes of a wheel. To stand before it is to feel the weight of myth pressing close, the stories not as abstract symbols but as living presences woven into the stone. The mountain does not need to be explained. It is enough to see it, to feel it, to recognize that some places carry significance beyond language. The land surrounding Kailash only deepens its mystery. To the east lies Lake Manasarovar, its waters considered sacred, shimmering like a sapphire under the thin air. Pilgrims bathe in its shallows, believing the water cleanses sins and carries blessings. Nearby lies Rakshastal, its twin, darker and saltier, associated with demons in Hindu lore, its still waters reflecting a different kind of silence. Between them, the contrast feels deliberate, light and shadow, purity and danger, yin and yang embodied in water and stone. Beyond the lake stretch endless plains, dotted with nomad tents, their herds grazing under the watchful gaze of Kailash. The landscape feels both empty and full, its vastness carrying a sense of presence, its silence charged with meaning. It is a place where everything seems amplified, each sound sharper, each breath deeper, each step heavier with significance. At sunset, Kailash glows with a light that feels almost unearthly. The bands of snow catch the sun, turning gold, then crimson, before fading into shadow. The lakes reflect the colors rippling with fire, while the plains grow dark and the stars emerge one by one. Pilgrims light butter lamps in monasteries, their flames flickering against murals of deities, their prayers rising into the night air. And above it all, the mountain stands silent, eternal, watching. It does not reveal its secrets. It does not need to. Its power lies not in what it shows, but in what it holds back. The sense that in this one place, the boundary between the human and the divine grows thin. Kailash is not only a mountain, it is a mystery embodied in stone, an axis that connects the visible and the invisible, a wonder hidden not by obscurity, but by its own sacred refusal to be touched. From the sanctity of Kailash, the path winds across the barren plateau, the air thin and sharp, the horizon endless. As you move westward, the earth rises again, higher, colder, more forbidding. Here begins the wall of the Himalaya, a barrier of stone and ice so immense it defines not just geography, but imagination itself. Among these peaks stands Shishapangma, a name less known than Everest or Lhotse, yet no less majestic, At just over 26,000 feet, it is the highest mountain entirely within Tibet. Its snowy dome gleaming in the thin air, its slopes sweeping downward into glaciers that carve vast scars into the plateau. Unlike Kailash, it is not forbidden to climb, and yet it remains rarely visited, its remoteness and storms guarding it fiercely. The mountain holds a presence that is not sanctified by temples, but by silence, a purity of wilderness that few ever witness. The valleys around Shishapangma are as extraordinary as the peak itself. High-altitude plains stretch for miles, barren yet alive with sudden bursts of color in summer. Alpine flowers blooming in carpets of yellow, purple, and blue, their petals trembling in the wind. Herds of wild Tibetan antelope, the chiru, move gracefully across these spaces, their forms almost ghostly against the vastness. Wild asses graze in small groups, their calls carrying faintly through the air. Snow leopards prowl unseen, leaving only tracks across fresh snow, reminders that even here, life endures at the edge of possibility. The rivers that emerge from the glaciers run cold and clear, carrying silt that glitters in the sunlight, their waters feeding valleys far below. To walk here is to feel you are in a place pared down to essentials: stone, ice, sky, and the fragile traces of life that cling to them. Beyond the valleys lies another world, hidden in folds of the Himalaya, remote glacial basins where time seems to stand still. Some of these are almost inaccessible, their entrances guarded by cliffs and icefalls, their interiors filled with lakes so still they mirror the peaks perfectly. In these hidden high valleys, silence reigns so completely that even the sound of your breath feels intrusive. Nomads who pass through speak of spirits that dwell here, of valleys where no one lingers long, for the solitude itself feels alive. Scientists come seeking rare plants adapted to thin air, or clues to past climates locked in glacial ice. Yet even their language falters before the scale of the land. These valleys are not for human possession. They are sanctuaries for the earth itself, places where the planet remembers its own beginnings, where everything unnecessary has been stripped away. Legends here flow as freely as the rivers. The Tibetan name for Shishapangma means grassy plain above, recalling a valley where nomads once grazed their animals. But the mountain is also known in Sanskrit as Gosa Thintan, the abode of the gods. Both names speak to the duality of the Himalaya, at once home and beyond reach, earthly and divine. In local stories, the mountain is a sleeping giant, its glaciers the folds of its robe, its summit the crown of a resting deity. When storms sweep across its slopes, thunder rolling and snow falling in veils, the people say the giant is stirring. When the skies clear and the summit shines white against blue, the giant is at peace. These myths, told in tents lit by butter lamps, remind us that mountains are not just stone. They are presences, woven into the human spirit as deeply as they are into the land. The few villages scattered along the lower valleys live in rhythm with this remoteness. Houses of stone and mud stand low against the wind, their walls painted white, their windows edged in red and black. Prayer flags stretch across rooftops, their colors faded by years of sun, their threads fraying but still carrying words of devotion into the thin sky. Yaks graze in fields of barley. Life here is not easy. Winters are long, summers short, and the air is unforgiving. Yet the people endure, their songs rising into the silence, their rituals tied to the mountains that tower above. They do not seek to conquer the peaks, but to live with them, to acknowledge their presence as guardians, as neighbors, as beings older than memory itself. As night falls over Shishapangma, the wind sharpens, the peaks turn violet, and then fade into blackness. The glaciers glow faintly under the stars, their ridges etched in silver by moonlight, their creaks and groans audible if you listen closely. The plateau lies in shadow, but the sky blazes with light, the Milky Way stretching from horizon to horizon, unbroken, impossibly vast. Fires flicker in distant tents, their glow fragile against the immensity of stone and ice. And above it all, Shishapangma stands silent, eternal, its summit catching the last gleam of starlight. In this moment, you understand that the hidden wonder here is not only the mountain's height or its remoteness, but its refusal to yield, its insistence on being what it is, unbroken, untamed, and profoundly beyond us. Its wonder is in its solitude, a reminder that some places exist simply to remind us of the Earth's enduring mystery. From the glaciers of Shishapangma, our path does not climb higher. Instead, it begins to turn inward, retracing not the steps of geography, but the echoes of memory. We have walked together through pillars of sandstone rising like guardians in Zhangjiajie, through seas of cloud in Huangshan, through the rainbow ridges of Dansha and the green towers of Guilin. We have stood before Jade Dragon and Meilai, silent giants holding both myth and ice, and we have wandered the barren heights of the Kunlun, the vast silence of the Tibetan Plateau, and the labyrinth of the Henduan. We have listened to the thunder of the Tian Shan, the whisper of the Kulian, the golden forests of the Altai, the mist-wrapped Galigong, and the desolate strength of the Pamirs. We have entered caves beneath the Nanling, stared into the mirror of Heaven Lake in the Changbai, and traced the balance of the Qinling. We have walked along cliffs of the Taihang, sipped tea beneath the Weiyi, and drifted among karst towers of Guizhou and Guanxi. We have stood in awe of Namchabawa, at the bend of the world's deepest gorge, circled Kailash in reverence, and finally stood beneath the silent crown of Shishapangma. Each of these places remains separate, yet together they tell a single story, the story of mountains as both presence and teacher. Mountains endure in ways that we do not. They rise and fall over millions of years, shaped by forces invisible to us. And yet when we stand among them, we feel their patience pressing against our own small span of time. They remind us of scale, of perspective, of the rhythm of the earth that continues whether we are watching or not. And yet for all their grandeur, they are never indifferent. They offer rivers that sustain us, forests that shelter us, stones that tell the history of our world. They inspire legends, songs, and prayers. They shape the boundaries of culture and faith. They remind us of humility and of possibility. To journey through them is to glimpse something beyond ourselves, something vast and enduring, but also something intimate, something that speaks quietly to the parts of us that yearn for stillness, for awe, for connection. In these hidden ranges, beauty is never just surface. It is not only in what you see, the cliffs, the forests, the peaks glowing in dawn. It is also in what you feel when silence surrounds you, in what you hear when rivers echo against stone, in what you remember when mist hides the view and forces you to listen instead of look. The unreal hidden mountains of China remind us that wonder is not about spectacle alone. It is about relationship between stone and water, between human and land, between story and silence. These mountains do not need us to exist, yet somehow in their presence, we become more fully aware of our own existence. We breathe slower, we walk softer, we see more clearly. Their gift is not just scenery, but perspective, a widening of the heart as much as the eye. And perhaps that is why we seek them. Not to conquer, not to possess, but to remember. To remember that we live on a planet still full of secrets, still capable of humbling us, still able to leave us wordless. To remember that nature is not only resource or backdrop, but presence, alive and immense, deserving of reverence. To remember that the stories we tell, of dragons, of gods, of immortals, of spirits, are not foolish, but reflections of the way these landscapes make us feel. When a mountain looks alive, perhaps it is. When a gorge feels haunted, perhaps it is. When a summit inspires prayer, perhaps it deserves it. The boundaries between myth and reality blur in such places, and maybe they are meant to. Wonder, after all, lives not in certainty, but in mystery. As we leave these mountains behind, the images linger. A stone pillar rising into mist, a lake glowing with dawn light, a glacier groaning in the dark, a village clinging to a cliff. But more than the images, it is the feeling that remains. The sense of being small yet connected, fragile yet enduring, brief yet part of something timeless. The mountains do not come with answers. They do not solve the questions of life. What they offer is reminder that we belong to this earth, that we are part of its silence, that we are shaped by its presence as surely as rivers are shaped by stone. To walk among them is to walk among truths too large for words, yet simple enough to feel in every breath. And so our journey ends here, not with finality, but with an invitation. These mountains are hidden, yes, but they are not gone. They wait, patient, silent, enduring for those who choose to seek them. Perhaps one day you will stand among them yourself and hear their voices in the wind, in the rivers, in the stones. Until then, carry their memory, carry their silence, carry their reminder that the world is still full of wonder, waiting quietly, waiting patiently, waiting for you to notice. And when you do, you will find that the journey never truly ends. It only deepens, one hidden mountain, one hidden moment at a time.